Why don't you just disappear? My stepdaughter snapped during an argument. Her mother chimed in, We'd be better off without you. I didn't say a word. I just packed my bags and left. This morning my phone was flooded with 13 missed calls. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, oppressive kind that fills a room when words have been said that can't be taken back. My name is Daniel. I'm 40, and for the past 5 years I've been married to Sarah, a woman with a teenage daughter named Emily from her previous relationship. Our life together was never easy. Emily was always distant, her teenage angst compounded by the loss of her biological father. Despite my efforts to bond with her, she remained aloof, often viewing me as an intruder in her life. Sarah, caught between her daughter and me, tried to maintain peace, but the tension was palpable. That evening, after a particularly stressful day, the simmering tension boiled over. Emily, in a fit of teenage rage, yelled at me, "Why don't you just disappear?" The words stung, but what followed was even more chilling. Sarah, her voice cold and detached, added, "We'd be better off without you." The room fell silent. My heart sank, and without a word I packed a small bag, left the house, and checked into a nearby motel. Lying on the stiff motel bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the argument in my mind, feeling the weight of rejection. The motel room was a stark contrast to the warmth of our home, or what I had thought was our home. The walls were thin, and I could hear the muffled sounds of life continuing outside my door. Cars passing, people laughing, life going on as if mine hadn't just imploded. I couldn't help but think back to how it all started. Sarah and I met at a mutual friend's party, where the connection was instant. She was vibrant, full of life, and her laughter was like music. But then there was Emily, always a shadow at the edge of our happiness. I tried, I really did. I took her to amusement parks, bought her the latest gadgets, even learned to play guitar because she mentioned once she liked music. But every attempt felt like pushing a boulder uphill. That night, after the argument, I lay there, the silence of the room amplifying the chaos in my head. I thought about Sarah's words, the way she looked at me, not with anger, but with a kind of resignation that was worse. It wasn't just a spat. It felt like a verdict. The motel's neon sign flickered outside my window, casting a red glow that seemed to mock the warmth I once knew. I wondered if this was it, if this was the end of my marriage. Had I been fooling myself all these years, thinking I could fill the void left by her father? Or was it something else, something deeper, that I couldn't see? My mind wandered to the countless times I tried to connect with Emily. There was this one time, not long after Sarah and I got married, when I found Emily crying in her room. I sat beside her awkwardly at first, then I just let her cry, offering silent support. The morning after the argument, I awoke to the incessant vibration of my phone. It was a stark contrast to the silence of the night before. I had 13 missed calls. The first few were from Sarah, then from Emily, and then from numbers I didn't recognize. My heart raced as I contemplated what could have prompted such urgency, hesitated, my finger hovering over the call button. What could have changed in just a few hours? Was it regret? An emergency? I finally decided to call Sarah back. Her voice was frantic. "Daniel, where are you? You need to come home now." I was confused, my mind racing with possibilities. "What's going on, Sarah? What happened?" "Emily's gone." Sarah's voice cracked, a mix of fear and urgency. "She left a note saying she couldn't handle this anymore. She's run away, Daniel. We need you here." My stomach dropped. Emily, despite our rocky relationship, was still a part of my life, a part I had vowed to protect. "I'm on my way," I said, my voice steady but my heart pounding with a mix of guilt and fear. As I drove back, the streets blurred past, my mind replaying every harsh word, every missed opportunity to connect with Emily. Had I pushed her away? Was this my fault? The motel's neon sign faded into the distance, replaced by the familiar route to our home, now fraught with tension and worry. When I arrived, Sarah was pacing in the living room, her face pale, eyes red from crying. "She left last night, right? After you did," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought she was just upset, that she'd cool off in her room. But when I checked this morning, she was gone." I looked around. The house felt emptier, colder. "Did she say where she was going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Just that she needed to get away. She left her phone, so we can't even track her." The reality of the situation hit me like a wave. Emily out there alone, possibly hurt, definitely scared. I felt a surge of responsibility, a need to fix what had gone so terribly wrong. "We need to call the police, Sarah. And we should check her friends. Maybe she's with one of them." Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of despair and hope. "I already called some of her friends, but no one has seen her." "I'm so scared, Daniel." I took her hand, squeezing it gently, trying to convey strength I wasn't sure I felt. "We'll find her, Sarah. We have to." The urgency of the situation pushed aside the remnants of our argument. There was no time for resentment or blame, only the pressing need to bring Emily back home. As we dialed the police, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a teenage runaway. Something told me I had to act fast. Driving back to our house, the streets were a blur, my mind racing with every possible scenario. The weight of guilt was heavy, pressing down on my chest like a vice. I had left to escape the pain, but now my absence had precipitated a crisis. Upon returning home, the scene was chaotic. Police cars lined the street and neighbors were gathered, whispering. Sarah rushed to me, her face streaked with tears. "Daniel, it's Emily. She's gone." My heart skipped a beat. Emily had left a note saying she was running away, feeling responsible for the family's discord. The shock of her disappearance was overwhelming. Sarah explained that after I left, Emily had a breakdown, feeling guilty for her harsh words. In her distress, she had decided to leave, thinking her absence might bring peace back to our home. The police were involved, and a search was underway. I felt a mix of guilt, fear, and a strange sense of responsibility. I had left to escape the pain, but now my absence had precipitated a crisis. Could I have prevented this if I had stayed? The officers were methodical, asking questions, taking notes. One of them, Officer Ramirez, had a kind face, but his eyes were sharp, probing. "Mr. Daniel, can you tell us about your relationship with Emily?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I swallowed hard, the words tasting bitter. It was complicated. She's been distant since I married her mother. I tried to connect with her, but it always felt like I was pushing against a wall. Sarah, standing beside me, her hand in mine, added, "Emily's been struggling with her father's death. It's been hard on her, and I think she's been blaming herself for our family's issues." Officer Ramirez nodded, jotting down notes. "And the note she left, did it mention where she might go?" Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, just that she felt she was the problem and needed to leave. She left her phone, so we can't even track her." The house felt colder, emptier, without Emily's presence. Every corner seemed to echo with the absence of her laughter, her music, her teenage tantrums. I walked through her room, the posters of bands she loved, the books she read, all untouched. I picked up a guitar I had bought for her, hoping it would be a bridge between us. It was dusty, unused. A pang of regret hit me as I remembered her. Words, "Why don't you just disappear?" Sitting on her bed, I felt the weight of our last argument. The silence of the room was deafening, filled with the unspoken words of regret and missed opportunities. Sarah joined me, her eyes swollen from crying. "I should have seen this coming, Daniel. I should have known she was this upset." I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. We both missed it, Sarah. But we'll find her. We have to. The search continued into the night. Volunteers from the neighborhood joined in, combing through parks, checking bus stations, and calling friends. The community's support was overwhelming, yet it did little to quell the fear gnawing at my insides. As the hours stretched on, the reality of Emily being out there alone, possibly scared or hurt, became more palpable. The police had set up a command center in our living room, maps spread out, calls being made. I couldn't sit still. I joined the search, walking the streets, calling out her name, hoping against hope that she would hear me, that she would come back. The night was cold, the air biting. Each step I took felt like a step further from the warmth of our home, from the life I thought we had built. Could I have prevented this if I had stayed? The question haunted me, a relentless echo in my mind. As dawn broke, the search teams regrouped. Officer Ramirez approached us, his face grave. We've checked all the usual places she might go. We're expanding the search, but we need to consider she might have left town. The thought of Emily, alone and days turned into a week with no sign of Emily. The community rallied, distributing flyers, and social media was flooded with posts about her disappearance. Sarah and I, despite our recent rift, worked together, our shared worry knitting us back together in a fragile way. One evening, as we were about to give up hope, a call came from a local diner. A waitress had recognized Emily from the flyers. She was safe but scared, refusing to come home. I drove to the diner, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and dread. Upon seeing her, Emily was visibly shaken, her eyes red from crying. She looked at me, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she continued. I thought if I left, maybe things would get better at home. I didn't want to cause more problems. I just needed space to think, to figure things out. I sat down across from her, the vinyl seat creaking under my weight. Emily, we've been worried sick. You're not a problem. You're part of our family and we love you. We need you to come home. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. But what if I make things worse? What if you and Mom are happier without me? I reached out, taking her hand gently. That's not true, Emily. Your mom and I, we've had our issues, but none of them are because of you. You're our priority, and we need to work through this together. She looked down at our hands, her fingers intertwining with mine. I've been so angry, so confused. I missed Dad so much, and then you came along, and I felt like I was betraying him by even trying to like you. My heart ached at her words, understanding the depth of her pain. I know I can't replace your dad, Emily, and I never wanted to. I just wanted to be there for you, to help you through this. I'm sorry if I've made you feel otherwise, she sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I didn't know how to tell you that. I was scared you'd leave if I wasn't the perfect daughter. I squeezed her hand. I'm not going anywhere, Emily. I made a commitment to your mom, to you. We're a family, and families stick together, especially when things get tough. She looked up, her eyes searching mine for sincerity. Do you really mean that? Every word, I assured her. We all need to talk, to clear the air. Your mom and I, we've been so focused on our own stuff that we've neglected how you've been feeling. Let's go home, Emily. Let's fix this together. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table, then back to me. Okay, she whispered, her voice a mix of relief and fear. But I'm scared. I know, I said, standing up and offering her my hand. But we'll face it together. We'll get through this, I promise. As we walked out of the diner, the night air was cool against our skin. Emily took a deep breath, her steps hesitant but moving forward. The drive back was quiet, filled with the unspoken promise of reconciliation and healing. Back at home, Sarah was waiting, her face a canvas of worry and hope. When she saw Emily, She rushed forward, enveloping her in a tight embrace. Tears flowed freely as apologies and reassurances were exchanged. We sat in the living room, the three of us. The silence now different from before. It was the silence of understanding, of a family trying to mend. Emily spoke first, her voice small but firm. "I'm sorry for running away. I was just so overwhelmed." Sarah, her eyes still wet, nodded. "We're sorry too, for not seeing how much you were hurting. We're here for you, always." I watched them, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the warmth of belonging. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time there was a glimmer of hope that we could heal as a family. Sitting in the diner, Emily opened up. She confessed that she had always felt like she was betraying her real father by accepting me. Her harsh words were a defense mechanism, a way to keep me at a distance. She had run away not just from the argument, but from the guilt of her feelings. I listened, my heart aching for her pain. "Emily," I said softly, "I never wanted to replace your father. I just wanted to be there for you, in whatever way you needed." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. We talked for hours, mending bridges, understanding each other's pain. Emily agreed to come home, but not before we made a pact to start anew, to communicate openly about our feelings. The drive back was filled with a cautious optimism. Emily sat in the back, her gaze fixed on the passing streetlights, her mind visibly churning through our conversation. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror, catching the occasional glimpse of her profile, softened by the dim light. Upon arriving home, Sarah's relief was palpable. She wrapped Emily in a hug, their tears mingling, a testament to the emotional turmoil they had both endured. We settled into the living room, the air thick with the need for resolution. Emily, her voice still shaky, began, "I'm sorry for running away. I was just so overwhelmed." Her words were a whisper, but they carried the weight of her regret. Sarah, her eyes glistening, responded, "We're sorry too for not seeing how much you were hurting. We're here for you, always." I watched them, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the warmth of belonging. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of hope that we could heal as a family. As the night deepened, we continued our conversation, each of us sharing our fears, our hopes, and our commitments to change. Emily spoke of her father, how she missed him, how she felt like she was losing him all over again by letting me in. "I didn't want to forget him," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought if I accepted you, I'd be betraying him." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Emily, your dad will always be a part of you, and nothing can change that. I'm not here to replace him, but to stand beside you, to help you remember him, to honor his memory by being the best family we can be." She looked at me, her eyes searching for truth. "Do you really mean that?" "Every word," I assured her, my voice firm with conviction. "We all need to talk, to clear the air. Your mom and we've been so focused on our own stuff that we've neglected how you've been feeling. Let's fix this together." The night stretched on, filled with confessions, apologies, and promises. We agreed to therapy, to family sessions where we could learn to navigate our complex emotions together. Emily, though still hesitant, seemed to find some comfort in our collective resolve to mend our fractured bonds. As dawn approached, we were all exhausted but lighter. The burden of unspoken words lifted. Emily, now more at ease, leaned against Sarah, who had her arm around her, a protective shield against the world. Would this new understanding last, or was it just a temporary truce? The question lingered in the air, but for now we had each other, and that was enough. We had taken the first steps towards healing, towards becoming a family not just by name, but by heart. Back at home, the atmosphere was different. Emily was more open, her eyes no longer holding the guarded look she had worn like armor. Sarah seemed relieved, the weight of the past days lifting from her shoulders, her posture less rigid, her smile more genuine. We started family therapy, learning to navigate our complex emotions, each session peeling back layers of misunderstanding and pain. Over time, our relationship evolved. Emily began to see me not as a replacement for her father, but as an additional support in her life. She started sharing stories about him, her voice tinged with both sorrow and fondness. I listened, not trying to fill the void, but to understand the space he had left in her heart. Sarah and I worked on our marriage, understanding the importance of unity in our family dynamics. We learned to communicate, not just about the mundane, but about our fears, our dreams, and our love for each other and for Emily. One evening, as we sat together watching a movie, the room filled with the soft glow of the screen, Emily leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for not disappearing." Her words, simple yet profound, carried the weight of our journey. They were a testament to our newfound bond, a bond that was growing stronger with each passing day. The movie played on, but I was caught in that moment, feeling the warmth of belonging, the relief of reconciliation. Emily's head rested on Sarah's shoulder, and I could see the tears glistening in Sarah's eyes, not of sadness, but of a profound relief and joy. And so, our story continues, not with an end, but with a new beginning. Therapy sessions became our sanctuary, a place where we could speak freely, where Emily could express her grief, her confusion, and her need for connection. We learned to listen, truly listen, to each other. Sarah and I, we found new ways to show Emily that she was loved, not just by her mother, but by me, in a way that respected her father's memory. Our home, once a battleground of silent wars and unspoken resentments, began to transform. Laughter, genuine and heartfelt, started to echo through the halls. Emily's music, once a solitary refuge, now filled the house as she played her guitar, sometimes even inviting me to join her. We made small changes, like setting up a memorial corner for her father, where Emily could light a candle, share a memory, or just sit in quiet reflection. It was our way of acknowledging his presence in our lives, not as a ghost haunting our steps, but as a cherished part of our family's history. As weeks turned into months, the tension that had once defined our interactions melted away. Emily's grades improved, her smiles became more frequent, and her interactions with me shifted from tolerance to something akin to affection. One day, while we were all in the kitchen, Emily helping Sarah with dinner, she turned to me with a mischievous grin and said, "You know, Daniel, you're not half bad at chopping onions." It was a small comment, but it was a bridge, a sign that she was beginning to see me as part of her world, not just an intruder. Sarah, watching this exchange, her eyes met mine, and in that look there was a world of gratitude, of shared struggle, and of hope. We were not perfect, far from it, but we were trying, together. Our journey was far from over. There were still moments of misunderstanding, of old wounds reopening, but now we faced them as a unit. Emily's birthday approached, and for the first time, she didn't shy away from planning it with us. She wanted a small gathering, just family. And as we prepared, there was an ease, a lightness that hadn't been there before. The day of her birthday, as we sang to her, her eyes sparkled with a joy that was new or perhaps rediscovered. She blew out the candles, and in that moment, I felt the profound truth of our new beginning. And so, our story continues, not with an end, but with a new beginning. We were learning, growing, and healing, not just as individuals, but as a family. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.